Dolan, who was the anti-Trump candidate in the Republican primary, got 23% of the vote. He said the election was legitimate. He didn't go kiss Trump's ring, and he got 23% of the vote. And those voters are going to be Tim Ryan voters. We're going hard after them.
Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan now running against Donald Trump's pick in the Ohio Senate primary, J.D. Vance. But in a crowded field, that endorsement still earned Vance less than a third of the vote. Twice as many Republican primary voters cast their ballots for somebody else. So the question now, who gets their vote next? With us tonight to discuss, Juanita Tolliver, a veteran political strategist to progressive candidates and causes, and Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee and former lieutenant governor of Maryland. Michael, could Tim Ryan be right? He might not get all 23% of that vote, but could he get votes from Republicans who voted against Vance?
Sure. I mean, he's going to have to work it, though. I mean, it doesn't translate one for one from a primary, from a Republican primary, which largely has hard right, center right, sometimes voters. So he's going to have to work and edge those voters closer to himself. So it's going to matter how he sounds on a lot of issues in this race. And keep in mind that, Dolan, had the benefit of a little bit of a surge at the end there. But again, what were those voters? What is the composition of those voters? Why didn't they swing towards Mandel and certainly J.D. Vance? And so that if he can figure that little part of the formula out, I think he can pull a good portion of those voters to his side and make that mad dash against J.D. because J.D. is not the popular candidate in this race. He wasn't in the primary, but for that last minute endorsement, Mandel probably would have eked him out and beat him.
Well, Trump may have put him over the top, but he certainly didn't. You wouldn't call Trump a kingmaker, not in this case, and not in Michigan, Juanita. We saw an upset there when a Democrat won a congressional district. This is the only ever time this has ever happened. It has always been held by a Republican. Now, of course, the Republican she beat has said some extremely offensive things about rape. Listen to this.
Having 3 daughters, and I tell my daughters, well, if rape is inevitable, you should just lie back and enjoy it.
Lie back and enjoy it. Is this a warning for the GOP? Some of those fringe candidates are just too much, even for their voters.
Absolutely, Stephanie. And you saw the women's reactions in the moment that he said it, because it is that disgusting, that ignorant, and just harmful. And it just shows that if you call out this type of behavior, voters are going to respond to it. And that's what Carol Glanville did. She walked the line where she raised attention about that statement. She called it out for what it was and challenged him in real time. But once she had the attention of Republican voters and voters in general, she pivoted back to the issues that matter to them. Her platform was about the economy. It was about jobs. It was about education. But what she did in standing up for what is right and standing up for against that statement resonated with voters on both sides of the aisle. They want to see her punch back. And honestly, I think that's a lesson for all Democrats. You cannot ignore the harmful statements, the conspiracy theories, the lies coming from the right. You need to challenge it in real time and then pivot again back to the issues that matter to voters.
Mr. Steele, assuming it holds, what could a Supreme Court decision reversing Roe mean for Republicans in swing districts, right? The flavor Republicans you used to be.
Oh, let me tell you, there is a whole lot of angina going on in D.C. Let me tell you, Mitch McConnell is not a happy camper. This was not the conversation he wanted Republicans to have over the summer and going into the fall. It was not what Republicans in swing districts want to have to go stand in front of a very, very agitated, angry, and animated crowd of women and men on this issue. So, you saw it yesterday when McConnell stood at the podium and like Peter on Holy Thursday night, denied anything related to the subject, at hand. It's like, no, abortion, what abortion? Law, what law? And, we just want to worry about what happened in the leak. And the country's like, nah, that's not the conversation we're having right now. And so Republicans are going to have to figure out how to pivot into some kind of answer here, because you now have you've gotten your dream. You know, this has been an effort in the making for a long, long time. I've been in a lot of those meetings. So now you're here. And a lot of us at the time was like, OK, what about childcare? What about supporting these women? What about programs that they're going to need if you say you have to carry the child to term? And with the draconian laws that are being put in place right now, what the hell do you think is going to happen with the 10-year-old girl who's been abused by her father? She can't stay in that house. She's now pregnant with his child, and you're telling her she's got to carry to term, but you've got no resources available for her? That's the summer of 2022 for Republicans. And McConnell and a lot of them are not happy with how this has played out with the Supreme Court, particularly given those cases that forced this issue right into this cycle.
Juanita, are they going to be ready to answer those questions? If Republicans are insisting that a woman has to carry her pregnancy to term, 75% of women who get abortions are at or near the poverty line. Are Republicans going to make some sort of commitment to say, we're going to make a financial commitment to these women, or to start requiring child support starting at 6 weeks pregnant? Having a baby is expensive.
It's expensive, and having a baby that you don't want is harmful in multiple levels. And absolutely, they are not going to have any response to this, because this isn't about people. This isn't about caring about people or the children themselves. This is about control. This is about exerting control over a basic right and a basic freedom to women and pregnant people to access abortion. That's all this is about. And now Republicans have no cover to hide behind that. That's why you saw Mitch McConnell, him and Han, as Michael laid out, he has nothing to say about this, because they're ultimately the dogs who caught the car. And now they're like, oh, but we actually don't want this. They do want it. And they've been plotting for this for decades, Stephanie. They've been filling the court with Federalist Society approved judges. They've been forcing through nominations, like we saw with the rush jobs multiple times under Trump and McConnell's leadership in the Senate. And this is now what they're dealing with. And back to Ohio, remember, in that those primary candidates all came out and said, we are pro-life. We support this move by the Supreme Court if this is the decision that's ultimately rendered. But that's the other thing that Tim Ryan's going to be up against, because he's made it absolutely clear in the right way that this is about freedom for women. And that's going to turn off some of those anti-Trump voters. And so when he thinks about this conversion rate, he has to calculate in the fact that those anti-Trump voters and most of the Republican primary voters are probably anti-abortion too. And so he's going to have to make a choice about just how hard he's going to go after them, when the reality is that abortion is going to be a deciding factor in that election too.
Summer is about to heat up. Juanita Tolliver, Michael Steele, thank you for making us smarter tonight.